Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Happy 4th of July weekend. Great to have so many people here on a 4th of July weekend. I think we were expecting a smaller crowd, but thank you for turning out. It makes the weekend even more festive, so I really appreciate your presence. And as we celebrate our country this 4th of July weekend and all the blessings that this country has brought to us individually and communally, we also stand at a polarizing and confusing time in our nation's history. Along with that confusion has also come a lot of anger from Americans of all stripes. A 2019 NPR poll found a whopping 84% of respondents believing that we are angrier now than a generation ago. The poll at least partly finds some of that anger stemming from the constant availability of news, with 29% saying the news often made them angry, and 42% saying the news sometimes made them angry. The news, it seems, is uniquely suited to getting people worked up. While it does the important work of informing the public, it also informs them of things beyond their full control. Election contests, dangerous weather, violence in far-flung parts of the world, court decisions, etc. But of course, it is not just events outside of our immediate surroundings that make us angry. Personal losses and pain often cause that anger as well. These two causes of anger converge in spectacular form in our Parshat Chukat, with Moshe finding himself wrestling with both communal strife and personal loss, leading him to an anger that has dire consequences for his future. While Bamidbar is overflowing with stories of Israel rebelling against Moses and God, this moment is, in a sense, the rebellion to end all rebellions. While the Israelites will screw up a couple more times before the end of the Torah, this is the last of the classic rebellions of the 5 books of Moses, where the people complain about food, water, or power. In a certain way, all of the rebellions of the Torah were in preparation for this final trial. And yet, this story is not dissimilar from the test that Moshe and Aharon had faced prior to this. It is, in fact, eerily close to one of the first such rebellions after crossing the Red Sea. Even the name of the place where this incident in our Parsha occurs, the wilderness of Tzin, with the Tzadi, is almost identical to the place of the rebellion of Exodus 17, taking place in the wilderness of Sin, with a Samech, not very far away. More than that, the text of the stories is identical in parts. In Exodus, the people complain, Lama zeh helitanu mimitzrayim, la mitotanu. Why did this one take us out of Egypt to kill us? And then in our Parsha, V'lama helitanu mimitzrayim, la aviotanu el makom hara hazeh. Why did you take us out of Egypt to bring us to this terrible place? Sound similar? Additionally, in both stories, the people's complaints ascribe Moshe and Aharon as the ones with the power to take them out of Egypt and not God. They blame human leaders for their hardship and in their anger ignore or dismiss God's role in their redemption. And while both stories ask Moshe to take a staff and to get water from a rock, God in Exodus has him strike the rock, and God in Bamidbar commands him to simply take the staff for no practical purpose at all, as God only wants him to speak to the rock. These similarities and subtle differences between these stories make them kind of mirror images of each other. They offer almost the same essential story pictured through a different prism. The former telling of the first year after the Exodus, and the latter of the 40th year. After 40 years of trials, this final test should be familiar to Moshe and maybe easily overcome. Yet there are still some subtle differences in this final challenge that perhaps contribute to the different outcome. First of all, we have to note the unique context of our Parsha's tale. Specifically, the Torah very briefly notes just prior to this rebellion that Miriam died and was buried in that place. While we could read this as a mere piece of unrelated information, the Torah does usually not provide such information without a purpose, especially at the beginning of another story. Indeed, Rashi notes that the reason for this mention is that Miriam's death is directly related to the water crisis. He writes, Miriam's merit allowed the Israelites to have a well that followed them through the 40 years of the wilderness. With her death, the well dried up and the people suffered. But the connection of Miriam's loss is not just the cause of this communal crisis, but it also causes Moshe the deep personal loss of his sister. This, in a certain sense, is the ultimate test for Moshe. How will he hold up when the communal challenges are familiar, but his personal challenges are also pushing him to the limit? Added on to the difference in his personal circumstances, the commentator Richard Elliott Friedman notes that the commands from God are also different in this episode in significant ways. He rightly notes that in the first rebellion, God instructs Moshe to go to the rock or crag of Mount Sinai and strike it before the elders alone. In our Parsha, by contrast, he is instructed to gather the community and speak to the rock before their eyes. This is not just a performance before select members of society. This is for everyone to see. The command to act before the entire populace adds an additional communal element to this episode compared to that of Exodus 17. So, Moshe in our Parsha is facing a familiar test, but with the additional challenges of great personal mourning and having to deal with the people in a much more public way than when they first left Egypt. It is these two new stressors heaped on top of 40 years of complaints and rebellions and missed opportunities that sets him over the edge. He grabs the staff and heads to the rock with Aaron as God commanded, but then he goes off script, shouting, Shimuna Hamorim, Hamina Sela Hazeh, Notzi Lachem Mayim. Listen up, you rebels. Shall we bring forth water for you from this rock? This sarcastic comment, even for a leader who has often spoken more boldly than we might expect from God's favorite prophet, feels out of character with Moshe's usual addresses to the people. Generally, Moses redirects their anger, asking them why they address him and not God, or responds to complaints with justified criticism. But this time, Moshe answers the people's fire with his own fire. Not just in private speech with God, but before the whole people. Friedman further notes the problem of Moshe framing himself and Aharon as the ones who will bring forth water from the rock, not God. This is particularly damning for Moshe, who time and time again had to remind the people that it is God who is in charge and not him. Here he falls into the trap of the people who put all the responsibility on Moshe without acknowledging God's role in everything. And if we peer underneath this provocative response of Moshe, we may find a deeper psychological reasoning for his rageful response. The word for rebels in Moshe's speech is morim. While that is the traditional vocalization of the word, the same consonants, mem, resh, yud, mem, with different vowels, yield something altogether different. The name of his beloved sister, Miriam. Thus, embedded in Moses' fiery invective is the name of his sister he so recently lost, the one who until now was responsible in some sense for providing the people water. The one whose loss led to this crisis. It's as if Moses is shouting as much at his late sister or at God as he is at the people. Listen, Miriam, can I possibly bring forth water from this rock without you here to merit it? Listen, God, how can you test me now when my sister is gone? Moshe's anger, then, stems from the way that events beyond his control have taken away his stability and sense of balance. While the people also feel the loss, their loss is less personal than Moshe's, as the Torah does not note that they even formally mourn Miriam as they do with Aaron in our Parsha. Moses strikes the rock not once but twice, and water pours out, both a symbol of his own violent aggression in that moment, but also an incorrect affirmation to the people that it was, in fact, Moshe who had the power to bring the water forth, and not God. This is why in God's explanation for Moses' punishment, God explains it was since you didn't trust in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the people of Israel. Last time Moshe struck a rock, it was before the elders alone, who understood that God was the source of the water. This time, the people knew no such thing, and Moshe confirmed their point of view. Moshe, in a sense, annulled all God's wonders and care over the entire 40 years journey and all the lessons he attempted to teach the people with a few blows of his staff. That is perhaps why he is punished so harshly. This, for me, then, beyond being a story of trusting God, is a story of the dangers of falling into the trap of anger, especially when we are facing losses and circumstances beyond our control. While moments of great loss remind us of the painful but important lesson that we are not in control of God's universe, they also can be moments of danger for us. They are moments when we can overcorrect and buy into the false narrative that we are really the sole masters of our environment and our circumstances. We can strike out at others, like Moshe did, letting our personal suffering affect our communal positions and status as role models and leaders for others. Of course, loss and lack of control naturally cause anger, and we must allow that to be part of the process of grief. But at the same time, we must be very aware of how our grief can affect our relationships with the community and broader society. This, needless to say, is not an easy task. Our greatest leader failed at it and paid a dear price. We too may fail at times when we feel this loss of control. But my wish and blessing is that we should all strive to be more aware of how events beyond our control can affect our behavior and find success in learning the right lessons and keeping our communal relationships strong. Shabbat Shalom.